everyone, I'm Reagan.
And I'm Addie.
And this is Just Weird Crap. And I guess I should start out probably by defining how I'm using the term ghost ship, because there are several different ways the phrase is used sometimes. So, ghost ships are also called phantom vessels, and the most widely used definition is a ship or boat found with no living crew aboard.
Spooky.
Very spooky. And it also is sometimes used for, like, legendary flying ships, like the Flying Dutchman, that are in mythology and folklore, that are just, ghostly apparitions of ships that are sighted sometimes, or something like that in stories. So there's fictional ones as well. But this week I'll be just talking about factual accounts of ships that have been discovered.
Real ghost ships.
Yes.
Not those fake ghost ships.
I'll be focusing on factual accounts of ships that have been discovered adrift with no crew aboard and no explanation as to what happened to the crew.
I'm so excited. Legitimately, all week. Well, not all week, ever since you told me that you were going to be... I don't know when you did tell me that, but...
Well, I was really intrigued after our last episode, when you were doing the Bermuda Triangle, and you touched for a little bit on the Mary Celeste, and I was a little bit obsessed with that a few years ago, and it kind of revived my interest.
I think I remember that, when you were, really into that.
I was really into that for a while.
Yeah. Well, it's...
a little weird.
It's spoopy.
It is. It's so weird, and actually, I'll be talking about the Mary Celeste right now, but I did...
You okay?
I did some research on a few other ships as well that actually have even weirder circumstances.
Yes. So we should probably let people know the ghost ships episodes are going to be a two-parter.
Yes.
To keep things interesting, and so we don't put out like a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, I could have gone on for this forever. I had to edit myself, seriously.
Yeah, but so this is going to be part 1 of ghost ships.
And this will be the Mary Celeste, which is probably the most famous ghost ship.
I'm so excited.
So,
hit me with it. What's happening?
First, I'll cover the background of her voyage and then the discovery of the vessel. And then I'll get on to the proposed explanations.
Okay.
So, the SV Mary Celeste was an American merchant brigantine that was discovered deserted off the Azores Islands in 1872. She was seaworthy under partial sail, and her lifeboat was missing. Her cargo of denatured alcohol was intact, as were the captain and crew's belongings, but the captain and crew were never seen or heard from again. So, the Mary Celeste left New York City on November 5th, 1872, bound for Genoa, Italy. She was commanded by Captain Benjamin Briggs, who was a devout Christian and an experienced sailor. He came from a long line of sailors, actually. Mm-hmm. With him on this voyage, he took his wife and his infant daughter.
Oh, I thought she was like 2.
I read infant, and then later it said she was like 2, so I don't know. She was little. She was
I guess really
a
2,
baby.
Yeah.
I don't know. They weren't gone for that long, though. It has been established that Briggs was completely satisfied with his crew, who were described as peaceable and capable men by several different people.
No troublemakers.
His wife thought they were cool.
Just a chill group of guys.
Yeah, she wrote to her mother that they seemed to be doing well, and they weren't troublesome.
Okay.
So they left, and on December 4th, the crew of the Canadian brigantine, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, De Gratia, which had left New York shortly after the Mary Celeste and had kept to the same general route, spotted a vessel about 6 miles away, and they were concerned by the unsteady movements of the ship, and they weren't getting any response to their signaling. And so the De Gratia approached the Mary Celeste. They boarded the ship and found it completely deserted. The sails were only partially set and in pretty tattered condition, and 2 hatches were open.
Okay. What's a hatch?
A hatch. It's like, I think
Is it like on the floor?
I think it's the part where they, like, I think it's like a
that's what I
door
thought.
to the lower level of the ship that's, on the deck, and then you go down.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah. The binnacle, which I had to look up what this
is
was.
a binnacle?
It's like a little, I don't know, I keep thinking pulpit, but it's not a pulpit. But it's like a short little structure in which the navigational instruments are housed, the compass and stuff.
So it's like a cupboard, basically.
Well, it's like a waist-high a waist-high enclosure just to protect.
Is it like on the outside? Like
I think it's on the deck.
The deck.
Yeah,
the
like
outside.
the outside.
Floor of the ship.
It's on, and then it's covering the
important stuff.
the important stuff, the navigational tools, because without those in the 1800s, you were doomed.
Okay.
Okay, so it was moved out of place and its glass cover was shattered.
Ooh.
There were a few feet of water in the hold, but it wasn't an alarming amount. Apparently for the size of a ship, that was kind of okay. And an abandoned sounding rod was lying on the deck, which is used to test, like, the depth of the water.
See, I remember when I did the smaller amount of research, it said a sword was on the deck. But that's kind of different.
That's kind of, I wonder if there's, differing accounts. Yeah. This is what I found. It was completely seaworthy. Mm. The final entry in the log was dated 9 days earlier and recorded the vessel being about 400 nautical miles from Santa Maria Island in the Azores archipelago.
Okay.
Some of the captain's belongings were strewn around his cabin, but many of the vessel's important papers were missing, as was several navigation equipment. I don't know the plural of that.
Okay.
The galley was neatly put in order. There was no food left out or anything, but there were plenty of provisions stored away, so they weren't lacking for food or anything. And there was no visible indication of a struggle or violence. It appeared the vessel had been abandoned in an orderly manner. By all accounts, that's what it looked like.
Weird.
Yeah, weird, isn't it?
So weird.
So, there have been a lot of theories proposed to explain the disappearance of the crew. They range from plausible to kind of wacky supernatural explanations, it was aliens or whatever. And today I'll be focusing on the more feasible natural explanations floating around in the world. A very popular one is some sort of foul play.
Yeah.
Piracy by the crew of the De Gracia has been suggested. The theory...
Oh, yeah. How do we know they're to be trusted?
Well, I'll get to that in a second, the hole in this theory. The theory is that the crew of the De Gracia set a trap for the Mary Celeste, and they laid in wait, and then tricked the crew of the Mary Celeste to come aboard, and then they murdered them. The problem is the De Gracia was the slower ship, and she actually left 8 days after the Mary Celeste, so it would have been really, really hard for her to get ahead of her and then lay in wait for her. She wouldn't have been able to catch up. The timeline doesn't work for that. Also, they didn't take anything, so that would have been...
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much
they just
everything's
were murdering
there.
for fun, I guess.
But in a very,
very bad job of pirating.
They murdered in a very organized fashion.
Yeah, and then left everything else. Another theory is that the captains of the Mary Celeste and the De Gracia conspired together to share salvage money from the Mary Celeste. Like, if you found an abandoned ship, you could turn it in and get a reward. Mm. They did know each other casually. The two men did know each other a little bit. They weren't, like, best friends. But it doesn't really make sense for them to have devised this plan that would leave such a weird attention-drawing mystery of just a random...
Yeah, like, you think they would have, like, thrown about some stuff and made it look like a...
They didn't...
Legit...
They were... Basically, if that was what happened, they kind of did the worst possible job. Also, what happened to the captain and the crew? Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, like, they've never... Like, there's been no sightings of them, or like, oh yeah, they came back after a couple years.
That's like, that's a real serious thing
They
to
really
do.
took that money and went underground.
And Briggs, the captain of the Mary Celeste, left his school-aged son behind.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that.
That would have been kind of a crappy thing to do.
That's real crappy. Yeah.
If he just
I don't feel
left
like
his
he
son.
did that. They seemed like a really nice
He
family.
seemed like he was a very honorable man with a very good reputation. So yeah, that doesn't really make sense. And obviously it wasn't just random pirates because, again, the ship was not looted. So very, very talentless pirates.
Yeah, you were very bad at being a pirate.
Yeah, and no signs of a struggle or anything. I doubt they were just like, oh, look, pirates, let's jump in the lifeboat and let them, I don't know. Doesn't make sense.
No, it really doesn't.
So foul play is probably not the answer. There's also, like, insurance fraud and stuff, but again, where did he go?
Yeah, that doesn't sit right with me. Like, because whenever you hear a story about someone committing insurance fraud, there's always all these things that come out afterward, like, oh, yeah, then they were found, like, a few weeks later with all this money, and there's always something weird that goes on. You never hear about someone doing that. No one just
disappears without a trace.
Truly, yeah.
Like, the entire crew, too.
All of the crew was
you
gone,
think the
too?
crew would not be on board with that?
Because there was, like, 8 guys,
Yeah,
right?
I think there was a crew of 8.
So, yeah.
As well as Briggs and his wife and daughter.
So that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that would be very, very intense.
Yeah.
Natural phenomena has also been suggested, which would make a little bit more sense. Some people believe that an equipment malfunction caused the crew to believe that the ship was taking on an alarming amount of water really quickly.
Yeah.
And they rapidly abandoned the ship. Without getting into a ton of nautical phraseology, because I was looking up a lot of things in the dictionary when I was doing this. I was like, okay, what the heck does that mean? Basically, a water spout nearby could have caused low barometric pressure, which would potentially do a bunch of stuff to the drainage and the water systems and all that, but in the end, it could cause false readings in their equipment.
Oh, okay.
And a water spout could also explain the tattered state of the sails and the amount of water in the hold, as well as the fact that the interior and the cabins in the ship were kind of wet. They were kind of damp.
Oh, interesting.
Other natural explanations include the Mary Celeste becoming becalmed, and the captain being concerned that the ship would drift toward and run aground on a reef off the coast of Santa Maria Island, which they were near.
But what does becalmed mean?
Oh, becalmed. Well, it's.
I have never sailed a ship. Shocking, I know. I just have such a nautical vibe around me.
If you're a sailing ship,
which I am,
and if you have sails, you know, and you need wind in those sails to go where you need to go, and if there's zero wind, you can't go anywhere, and you are becalmed.
Oh,
and this happens sometimes, and they kind of just have to sit around and wait for a breeze. And when that happens, you can drift. And
couldn't they, like, put...
I would have thought they would have put an anchor down or something. I don't know. But this theory is that he, you know, was concerned that they would run aground on a reef. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, that's a logical fear, but the problem is that when the ship was found, its sails were only partially set, which would not make sense, because if you're becalmed, you set every sail, from what I've heard. You want to set every single sail you can to catch any breeze. So, that doesn't really work. If they were becalmed, he was kind of doing everything wrong.
And he wouldn't have, because we've already established.
Yeah, he was an experienced
They all
sailor.
knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He was very highly esteemed in his field.
Weird. Okay.
So one last theory is that fear of an imminent explosion of the cargo, which was denatured alcohol, may have caused the captain to evacuate the ship. It's possible, this is the seaquake theory, that an earthquake on the ocean floor, a seaquake, might have jostled and kind of broken up the cargo a little bit.
Yeah. And
released alcohol fumes, and he was afraid that the vapors were going to cause the ship to blow up, and so rapidly evacuated the ship. This would explain why the hatches were open, the hatches for the hold. There were 2 hatches open, and they might have been trying to get the fumes out and air out the ship. In addition to that, the rope securing the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste had been cut, not untied. So when they left, they wanted to leave quickly.
Yeah.
The problem with this theory is that the cargo was pretty much fully intact and there was no damage from an explosion. So, you know, if he had been afraid of this, it was not a grounded fear.
Had this guy transported denatured alcohol before, or do we know that?
I don't think anyone knows that. So the problem with that's the problem. But in 2006, there was an experiment done by chemist Andrea Sella, and it put this theory to the test. I can't really explain the chemistry behind this, but using a model of the ship's hold, he created a very considerably fiery explosion, which unexpectedly left no fire damage in the hold. It was just a blast of flame, and it was followed by cooler air, which left no scorching or soot or anything in the hold. So
crazy. So theoretically
it could have happened,
and then we wouldn't have seen it, or the people.
Yeah, there would have been no evidence, and it could have blown the hatch door. The hatch door was kind of pushed. Yeah, it was in a weird position.
Interesting.
So it's like,
I guess what I kind of wonder is, like, what did they do after they rowed away in the rowboats?
I mean, you don't really have a great chance of survival. I mean, they could have hit bad weather, or
because, like, how far away were they from?
They're 400 miles away from land.
Gosh, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
So yeah, that was.
Oh, that's so sad.
It's just odd that such an experienced captain would put them in this lifeboat. It would have to be a very really dangerous situation for him to leave a seaworthy ship. Yeah, take his family. Yeah. And for the entire crew to go along, you know, it would have to be a really dangerous circumstance for him to
an exploding ship.
Yeah, abandon a seaworthy ship in favor of a tiny little lifeboat.
Wow.
So that's the story of the Mary Celeste, and that actually went a lot faster than I was expecting. So, do you want me to cover one more ship, or do you want to?
Yeah, keep going. Or do you have any? Are there any more like weird?
Those were the best explanations I could find of the Mary Celeste.
The weird supernatural ones.
That might have to be another episode because I didn't make any notes about that.
I will say I have heard, I think, one thing about the Mary Celeste in another podcast. I don't really remember where or when or much about it, but I do remember them talking about like it probably was like a supernatural phenomenon, but kind of like everyone on the ship kind of like becoming like kind of going into a trance or something, and then doing something that didn't make sense, like just all getting up into a rowboat and leaving, like when it didn't make any sense. Did you see anything about that?
I didn't.
Or no?
Honestly,
I might be making it up.
I mean, I don't know. It is possible that they were some sort of mass psychosis.
Yeah.
And they all did something weird. I mean, if it wasn't a really, really dangerous circumstance, the captain would have to be out of his mind to leave the ship like that, and the entire crew, which I'm guessing were experienced sailors as well.
What do you think it was, like, when you read all of the explanations?
To me, the water spout...
I was going to say, that one actually seems like it could be really plausible. That one makes the most sense,
because the ship was wet, there was water in the hold, and thinking the ship was about to sink would be a really good reason to get off of it.
Yeah.
You know, you have no chance on a sinking ship. And they might have... you never encountered a water spout before. I mean, I don't know how common that is, but if your instruments are saying that your ship is sinking, you're going to want to get off in a hurry, and a breeze could have separated them, and they didn't know that the ship didn't sink.
Yeah.
To me, that honestly explains the most, and it seems like that would be a logical thing for the captain to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the Mary Celeste. I can stop here, or I can keep going. I got 2 other ships.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. So, I did research about 2 other ships. There was one that was found about a century before the Mary Celeste, and then one about a century after.
Wow.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of boats that have been found this way that I've never heard of, but I decided to focus on ones that really have no explanation, because there's a few that it's like they found them and then years later something that was discovered that would kind of explain what happened. Yeah. Like, it was a mystery at the time, but then later on they were like, oh, okay, we just found this out. New evidence.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll start the farthest back in the past with the SV Seabird, which...
Now, what does SV stand for?
I think it's sailing vessel.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And then I think MV is motor vessel, which is the other ship that I researched.
Okay, that makes
sense.
I
had to look up that, like, saved on my phone is like a list of sailing nautical terms and stuff, because I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so this shouldn't take that long, because there's not that much information about this, it being the 1750s or 60s. So, the first thing about this is that the year is unclear. Everything that I read about this was like in 1750 or 60.
Oh, okay.
This boat was found. The SV Seabird was a merchant brig. Don't ask me to explain the brig thing. I don't know what kind of ship that is. It was a merchant ship commanded by John Husham, and it ran aground on the shore of Rhode Island, returning from a voyage to Honduras. And the weird thing is there was a pot of coffee boiling on the stove in the galley.
What?
Like, yeah, so when it had been abandoned, obviously it couldn't have been abandoned that long ago, because the coffee would have boiled away in just a little while.
So it was, like, actively boiling.
It was actively boiling. There was coffee in a pot on the stove boiling.
That is
also, you shouldn't boil coffee, I don't think.
Well, I think that's the only way they could really make it back then.
I know, that distracted me while I was
researching,
and I was
spooky.
Like,
that's actually, like, very eerie.
Isn't that weird? So it was probably abandoned not far from shore.
A few minutes beforehand.
Yeah, so it's like they just bailed on the ship, like, they were almost to their destination, and they left the coffee.
Wow.
So it obviously had been deserted recently, and her crew of 8 was missing, as was the ship's longboat, but a live dog and cat were found on board.
Oh.
They left the dog and cat, which is like jerks.
Those people suck.
But I mean, the dog and cat had a better chance than they did, apparently, because they were never seen or heard from again. So, I mean,
and worked out well. How far away were they from shore?
I couldn't find that information. I don't think it's super well recorded. They don't even agree on the captain's name. Like, historical accounts, but it was not far from shore.
Okay. By
all accounts, it ran aground on the shore. Oh, sorry, I literally just wrote that down and I didn't notice it. Wow. I just said that. It ran aground on the shore. It got onto the...
Okay. No, I know what run aground means. Yeah, so I'm just thinking that it was probably... I mean, if there was literally a boiling pot of coffee when it ran aground, I mean, I know how quickly it takes to make coffee or something like that. Like,
and how quickly something can boil away over
or
an open flame.
Yeah, so that's like a couple minutes, like 10, 15 minutes beforehand, I would...
You would think if they decided to just head in the longboat for some reason...
go to the shore as well.
Go to the shore, they would have had a really good chance. I mean, they could not have been far from shore when they did that, so what happened to them?
I don't know.
It's so weird.
Keep going.
I don't know. The ship was undamaged, and that's all the information I have.
Wow.
So that's the spooky mystery of the SV Seabird.
That is wild. Okay, do the next one.
Okay. This one's a little bit longer, because it's a lot more recently, too. It's happened, so there's better information about it.
Yeah.
Very detailed information, actually.
Good.
And photographs.
Oh,
which
cool.
we can...
put up on all of our
yeah.
socials.
So this is the MV Joyita.
Joyita.
Which is Spanish for little jewel. I found out, which is cool. On October 3rd, 1955, the American merchant vessel MV Joyita and her crew of 25 left Samoa, bound for the Tokelau Islands, some islands in the Pacific.
Okay.
The journey was expected to take between 41 and 48 hours, so
not long. Journey, yeah.
It was a short journey. She was captained by Thomas H. Miller.
Okay.
The ship was reported overdue, and a search and rescue mission was launched, and they covered nearly 100,000 miles of ocean. And no trace of the ship or the crew was found until the vessel's discovery on November 10th, 1955. She was found listing heavily to port, which is left.
Okay.
And she was adrift and more than 600 miles from her intended route.
Oh, that's not
There
good.
was barnacle growth well above the waterline, and that indicates that she had been listing for some time.
Yeah.
The radio was damaged, and there was faulty wiring, and it only actually had a 2-mile range, but it was it was tuned into an international marine distress channel.
Oh, okay.
She was not in good repair, but I'm guessing she kind of left that way because it seemed from everything I was reading, it seemed like it was just not a well kept up ship.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be such a short journey, too.
Yeah,
it's probably
well, we can make it.
Yeah, if you're driving, 2 miles down the road, you're not going to be like, oh, I have to have everything perfect on my car. It's just
I mean, he probably didn't expect anything to happen on such a short journey.
This is why I hate the water. It's so scary.
She, like I said, she was not in good repair, faulty wiring, rusted pipes.
Yeah.
But her design was such that she was virtually unable to sink, no matter how damaged the ship was. So it really would not make sense to ever abandon the ship. It would make more sense, especially in this time frame where there was decent technology and, search and rescue missions had a better chance of finding you.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
To just stay put on the ship that can't sink.
Yeah.
Instead of hopping into the dinghy and the 3 life rafts that she carried that were missing.
Yeah, and especially because, they could communicate with
I mean, if they were in
people.
a 2-mile range, they would have been able to, and with the amount of water they covered, you probably would have been able to find them at some point.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they knew where he was going, the ship was reported overdue, so somebody knew he was supposed to be there. Yeah. And like I said, it was carrying a dinghy and 3 life rafts, and they were all missing. One engine was found covered in mattresses.
What?
And the other was partially disassembled.
Whoa, okay, so there's a story there.
Yeah, it is.
Who's like, oh my gosh, let me put this mattress on this engine.
Probably there was some sort of a leak or water spraying, and they were trying to protect the sensitive, instruments and keep them from getting water squirted on them. Wow. Mattresses, though.
That is, I mean, I guess it I don't know what a ship's engine looks like, honestly. Yeah. So, I'm picturing, this giant thing with, stuff, pieces whirring and flying everywhere, but I'm guessing it was probably something that you could put a mattress up against.
I mean, I'm trying to envision, a car engine, but on a boat, which is probably wildly inaccurate.
Probably, yeah. We obviously don't know.
I mean, it was a motor vessel.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it does make sense to put,
they're thick and absorbent.
Thick insulation for that, but I just wonder,
something was clearly wrong.
I would think that something would, catch on fire if you did that.
I kind of would too, but I guess they were willing to risk fire over, fritzing everything.
Yeah, I guess if, water's... Yeah. Was there, water damage there or anything?
There was some leaking. I'll get to that in a second. Okay. But, yeah, this was the condition she was found in. The engine was covered in mattresses. The other one was partially disassembled. So she was running on only one engine.
Okay.
Which apparently she was supposed to run on too.
Yeah.
Electric clocks on board had stopped at 10:25.
Ooh.
And the light switches were on. So whatever happened at night. I'm not sure why the power was out, but I guess the generator just couldn't keep going. There was a generator on board, and the lights and stuff were hooked into that. So were the clocks. So whenever it stopped, the light switches were on. So when they left the lights on, the...
Weird. Okay.
The lights in the front and everything. The log and several navigation instruments and firearms that they kept on board were missing.
Okay.
And this is kind of the freaky part. A doctor's bag was found containing 4 lengths of bloody bandages. Now, of note among the passengers of the Joyita was a surgeon, Alfred Dennis Parsons, and he was on his way to perform an amputation, which I don't know why that's like pertinent information, but there was a doctor on board.
Okay, who knew how to amputate things.
Yeah, he was a surgeon from World War II.
Okay.
So yeah, there was that. So that might explain.
Someone was injured at
on
the
point.
Boat.
Yeah, and 4 lengths of bloody bandages. They were it wasn't a paper cut.
Yeah. Yikes.
Yeah,
Ouch.
her lower levels were flooding. They were partially flooded, but her hull was sound.
Okay. And you said this boat, like, basically
couldn't sing.
Be sunk.
It was very, very buoyant.
Now, did the crew know that?
The captain should have.
Yeah.
The captain of the crew of the ship was most likely aware of the ship's ability to remain afloat.
Yeah. That's wow.
So
there's so much going on here.
I know there was so many. I excluded several things too because I was just like, this could go on forever.
Oh my word.
This is the injured captain theory, which to me makes the most sense. That he somehow became injured or was killed, hence the bloody bandages. And when the rest of the crew discovered that the ship had sprung a leak, they, not knowing that the ship really couldn't sink, they panicked and abandoned ship.
I feel like that's something you should probably share with the crew, though.
Yeah, that would probably make more sense to be like, hey, just stay put if something happens.
Because if something does happen to the captain, which can happen, you want the crew to know, like, there needs to be a second in command, like...
He did have a first mate, and I'll get to that in a second, too, as an interesting theory.
Yeah. Okay. There's just so much going on here. I don't know what the mattresses on the engine, the bloody bandages.
There's a lot of weird details. A friend of Captain Miller believed that he would never ever have left the ship because he knew how it was built. Yeah. And that it couldn't sink, really. And this friend was aware that there was some dislike between the captain and the first mate. I don't know why you take with you a first mate that you didn't get along with, but that's probably a different story. The first mate, Chuck Simpson, and perhaps they got into a disagreement that turned, violent, and they fell overboard or were incapacitated somehow. Again, bloody bandages.
Men, I'm telling you.
And without the knowledge of these 2 experienced sailors, the remaining crew and passengers might have panicked when the ship began taking on water.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
So maybe the captain knew, maybe the first mate knew, but they...
Like, leave a note for them. Put a
that would make sense, but he probably figured that in 48 hours they wouldn't need it.
Exactly.
And without their knowledge and reassurance, that everybody just left.
Yeah.
And another theory involves kidnapping by Japanese or Soviet forces, which this theory really doesn't have any sound evidence, and it was probably fueled by Cold War era suspicion and tension. That was kind of what everybody blamed things on.
Well, I would think that that could have happened, but the fact that there was like all that weird stuff, I keep coming back to the mattresses on the engine. I don't know why that seems just so
That's
spooky
really
to
stuck
me.
With you.
But that, and then like the bloody bandages, like obviously something happened on this ship.
Something bad happened.
Yeah, but it wasn't like, it doesn't appear that they were like I don't know what happened, but it seems like something went wrong and everyone was like trying to figure out what it was. And,
I think a pipe burst or something, and that's why there was the flooding, and that's maybe why they put the mattresses on. I mean, like I said, the ship was not in good repair.
Yeah. So
they might have just been like, oh shoot, there's water spraying all over, like put a mattress on the engine to keep it from getting wet.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but piracy has also been suggested as an explanation. And what is interesting is nearly 4 tons of cargo was missing.
Oh, okay. Well, that's... So, what were they hauling again?
It didn't say. I could not find what they were hauling.
Oh.
So that was annoying. But apparently they were carrying cargo as a merchant vessel. Okay. And some of it was missing.
Okay, well, that does change things.
That does change things. And mutiny has also been suggested as a possibility, and this kind of does make sense, except for one thing. So there was the damaged machinery in the ships, and maybe they ran into bad weather, hostile conditions, and the crew might have pressured Miller to turn back, but he knew that the Joyita couldn't really sink, and he refused. And there was a struggle, and he was injured or otherwise incapacitated. Bloody bandages. Yeah. And they decided to abandon the ship for some reason, like they ran into a squall or something, and the first mate, who would now be in charge, ordered that they abandon ship. The problem is that it would be unlikely that he would abandon a floating ship in favor of small life rafts.
Yeah, that's what I keep coming back
Especially
to.
if there was a storm.
Yeah.
That's the last place you want to be.
Was there any, like, record of the weather in that area at that time? Like, does anyone know?
It's the Pacific. I mean, Pacific Islands, I mean, I don't know. But the Pacific Ocean is generally known for being not, like, horribly stormy all the time.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like,
And they weren't in, like, the
they weren't
Gulf
in
of
the
Mexico or something.
Bermuda Triangle.
No, they were not. But yeah, again, the first mate was also an experienced sailor, and he probably never would have abandoned ship in favor of little life rafts in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
So maybe they saw an island or a reef and they tried to reach it and they were swept out to sea. Really, we'll never know. But what do you think is the most logical explanation for this? I want to hear your
I feel
thoughts.
like something happened on the ship. Like, it, obviously I know, but, like, I keep coming back to, like, it seemed like you said it was the nighttime that something
all the lights
happened.
were left
All the
switched
lights were
on.
So I almost think, like, something, like, everyone went to bed peacefully and all this stuff, and then, like, something happened, like, the pipe burst and someone was injured, and so everyone's running around trying to turn on all the lights and get all this stuff done, and then they ended up abandoning the ship for whatever reason. I don't specifically know why that was, though. And I guess that's the mystery, is no one actually knows why.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, clearly someone was injured. So there might have just, I mean, injury sounds very ominous until you think maybe he just tripped and hit his head on something. Like, yeah. I mean, somebody tripped and hit their head on something.
But it's mysterious because
so weird.
Why did everyone just get up and abandon the ship? That's why it seems weird and so mysterious.
To me, it seems like maybe the most logical explanation is that the captain and the first mate somehow got into a violent disagreement and were both not able to take command because they both should have known that, and so maybe the rest of the crew didn't. Yeah,
like, just
don't take a first mate with you that you don't like is the moral of the story.
Pretty much. Or just, like, be a man and don't let that affect your
attack each other. I don't know.
Yeah, like, get people safely to shore, and then you can fight and brawl all you want.
Yeah, then beat each other to a pulp.
Wow, so what do you think it is?
To me, that just makes the most sense, that somehow both of them became incapacitated and they were no longer able to command the ship and keep everybody from freaking out, and then everybody left.
So, like, a lot of things happened. It wasn't just, like, the first mate and the captain got in a fight and fell overboard. It was, like, there was something happened to the ship because, like, there was the mattresses up against the engine and all that. So, obviously something... The bloodied bandages and... everyone abandoned the ship. Like, to me, that's three separate things.
Something kind of catastrophic must have... A very bad chain of events must have led up to this.
That's my thing. Is, like,
and it was night, which makes everything worse.
And it was nighttime. So, like, if it was, like, just the captain and the first mate fighting and going overboard, like, that's terrible. But honestly, the rest of the crew probably could have gotten them to shore safely.
Yeah, I mean...
Or if it was just the ship, like, having a burst pipe or whatever, it's like, okay, that could have been fixed if the captain and the first mate were still there. But it's like, all of that stuff happening is like, wow. But then also the cargo being gone. What the heck is up with that?
I don't know.
I don't know
which
how that
kind of suggests piracy.
It does. But like, very
the
neat
logbook and why would you take the logbook if you were pirates?
There was
and navigational instruments, unless they're valuable, which they might be.
Well, pirates have to get around too.
Well, I'm guessing they had their own, but they probably might have taken them to sell them. Now that I say that out loud.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me.
You can sell guns.
Yeah. I also want to know what they were transporting.
I do too, and maybe I'll have to figure that out, do a little deeper dive into that, because I didn't even think about that. I just read that some of the cargo was missing, and I never really thought about that.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. As we keep doing these episodes and stuff, we'll get more information and
better information. I see this one. There was just so much information
going on. Like with the Mary Celeste, it's very spooky, but honestly, I can see it being I obviously we don't know for sure, but we can, I think, pretty easily explain it as like, oh, there was a, like, what's the spout or the water spout that happened or something, and they thought they were getting wrong readings. They thought they needed to abandon ship. Like, that's horrible and tragic and just awful to think about, but it's probably happened a decent amount back then.
There was a lot of accounts of ghost ships.
Exactly. But it's like this one, I think also because it was in the 50s, like the 1950s.
1955.
That was, I mean,
they had sonar and radar.
That was
better equipment. I mean, it's obviously nothing like it was today, but it was a lot more similar technology that we're still using. It's a lot harder to like get lost.
Exactly, and yeah, that is. And there's just so many separate things that seem to have happened.
Yeah, it was like a perfect storm scenario. I'm guessing that the mechanical failures and leaks and something happened to
and then
somebody
also,
on board.
Your cargo is gone.
And also, yeah,
when did that happen?
Yeah, how did that happen?
Why? That is.
To me, this is honestly more intriguing than the Mary Celeste.
It really is. Like
the Mary Celeste gets a lot of notoriety and is very well known, but this to me is like way weirder, freakier circumstances, especially it being a lot more recent.
Yeah, so, I think having like an older ship, like, oh, we don't know why, like, well, because it's so old, like, there's so much we don't know. There's so much
1870s, like,
exactly, but like just the 50s and all that weird stuff. That's
actually... And such a short voyage. I mean, going from New York to Genoa, you have to cross the entire Atlantic Ocean. But
like, so much can go wrong.
This was just probably a few hundred miles.
Yeah.
A 2-day journey at the most. Like,
what
the heck?
Yeah.
What happened to make that? And like I said, it just had to have been just a boom, 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 one after another. Something kept happening, and eventually everyone just panicked and left.
That's wild. But then what's so crazy is they were so close, obviously so close to the shore. And also, so all this stuff happened, and then they go and make coffee.
That was a different ship.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was in the 17-somethings.
Oh, yeah. Never mind. I got that mixed up.
I don't know if there was any coffee on this ship.
Okay, never mind. Once I said that, I was like, wait, that doesn't sound right.
Scratch that.
Still, though, that's really wild.
Isn't it? It's so weird.
It's because it seems like it can be explained by just like, oh, the captain and the first mate like got into the scuffle and then all these bad things happened. But then what happened to the cargo?
Yeah, that too.
That's what I need to know.
I guess like parts of the ship were also damaged, but it could have been because it was adrift for clearly a long time. The barnacles moved in.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure why it was listing so, because I saw pictures and this ship was almost on its side, but it being any other ship probably would have sunk because it was listing so badly, but it was so floaty.
Wow.
It could stay afloat.
Weird.
Yeah, and it was weird. And it was so far away from where it was supposed to be too. It just had been drifting clearly for a while.
Yeah.
It's a mystery. It's a mystery.
That's why we don't know.
Just weird crap was going on there.
Oh man.
So that's all I got for today about ghost ships. I was happy I was able to cover this all in under 45 minutes.
I know. I think we're going to try to keep our episodes to about 45
I think that's a good
minutes.
length, yeah.
30 minutes to 45 minutes. We don't want to make you guys...
Just like a good TV show, but
exactly.
you listen to it.
Exactly. Well, we hope that you enjoyed listening, and we hope you tune in next week for more weird crap.
Yup.